going to talk right now. Money in the Bank being cashed in. Now, I would say one thing about being there that is of interest when you're there during the Money in the Bank cash in is the fact that he had to do prior to the match one thing I've never seen on television, and that is just sit around with it. For example, when I went and I saw the first Money in the Bank cash in, I saw Edge cash in on John Cena back in 2006. And Edge ran right out there, made sure no one did anything. Everybody who was walking to their cars turned around because he made it quick. He made his intentions known. He ran right out there. That's pay-per-view. There's no commercials. He cashed in. And when you watch it on TV normally, that's how that works. You see Austin Theory at SummerSlam this year, running down real quick. Everyone's excited. But on television, for example, he came out during the commercial break. He came out during the commercial break, and he hovered over Seth Rollins, who was getting attended by medical personnel. But because we're not on TV... he didn't hand the referee the Money in the Bank. They didn't ring the bell. Like, we all just sat there, obviously knowing, like, he's holding it, and he's, like, pointing to the crowd and indicating, like, what he's going to do. But normally, in a sense, it's a quick thing. You run out there, everyone's, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? Hands it to the ref, like, boom, boom, boom.
It was all
here, he's
out.
just, like, holding on to it. And that kind of obviously shows you, again, if I was to write the grand book of 1,165 reasons why wrestling's scripted, and you don't have to just know it's scripted, but like these just added little elements that can kind of just show you how it's scripted, even if you didn't know it was scripted. And that's one of them right there, because if he was truly cashing in Money in the Bank, if this was truly a real achievement, a real sport, if you will, he wouldn't sit here and go, oh, we're off TV. You know what I mean? Like if you're going for the game-winning field goal, in the Super Bowl, you don't ask, are we on TV right now? You kick it. You don't go, how are the cameras looking? Are the cameras on me currently? You kick it, and if it's not on TV, that's not your fault. That's NBC's fault, right?
Well, I got to stop you there. A little inside baseball. Uh-huh. They do have somebody who, the referees communicate with from the network.
The referees, yes. So they don't whistle you to start the play until you're on television.
They'll have somebody from the network that talks to the officials. Like they'll say, all right, kind of give them a signal like, okay, yes. Then you bring the kicker out. So.
Yes, but what I'm saying is the actual talent themselves, as long as they're following the rules. So, yes. For example, the rules of Money in the Bank are you run out there and you do it right away. You know what I mean? So,
typically, yes.
Yeah, so the fact that he was just hanging out with the Money in the Bank, obviously...
that kind of takes away from it.
It does, because he's just sitting there. We all know whether he's going to cash it in or he's not going to cash it in. We obviously know he's there for a reason. Something's going to happen, but he's not making those intentions known for like 2.5 minutes while he just sits there. And then when we're on TV again, then all of a sudden he like amps it up, like I'm cashing in, like after he was just hovering over Seth, just waiting, like he's like waiting in the wings.
From that perspective, because obviously I saw it on TV, obviously differently. I wasn't there. Would you have preferred that it was like it looked like a cash in, and then like Bobby Lashley just destroyed him, and then like it didn't happen?
I guess just in this aspect alone, I would have preferred that during the commercial break, while the medical were attending to him, nothing was going on, and then when we returned from commercial break, his music hits and he runs out there, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure, you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not too sure of how it looked on TV. His music might have hit, or he might have come out prior to the commercial break.
No, I got to think about it, because I'm not
sure.
And
then
now.
Waited, and then like, because they do, you've been to Raw, they do the things where like they come out, they go to commercial break, and when we return from commercial break, they act like we never went to commercial, like it was just a continuation. Yeah, well, so he might have come out prior to like get Corey Graves to be like, it's Austin Theory. What's he going to do? We'll find out next. And then he sat there for 2 minutes before doing so. But the point of the matter is, it would have been better if it was a fluent thing. If he, just he comes out, he does it, and if it's wait till you're on TV before he can do it all in one motion.
Here's the issue.
If you were to find some sort of positive that could have been taken out of that, we're going to talk a lot of negatives.
That wasn't aesthetically pleasing at all. Like from that perspective, being in the arena, there's two other pieces of this that is. To me, it's very telling on how WWE really feels about Theory, or shall I say, Triple H and company. Because if Vince McMahon was here, rubber stamped it, he would have been the champion already. That's kind of how I feel. And
that's crazy because Money in the Bank is essentially, we talked about it before. We talked about it the last couple of weeks when we were doing over what pay-per-views still belong in the calendar and their importance. And Money in the Bank is a big pay-per-view because it's essentially the Summer Royal Rumble. Its importance is very, very big. Whether they cash in and become the champion or not, it's a push towards the heavyweight championship. That is why Austin Theory came out at SummerSlam. He had no right to be involved in Brock versus Roman Reigns. He has no right to be involved in Roman versus Drew. But because he had Money in the Bank, it all of a sudden put this guy who had no storyline with any of these people involved in this, because that's what Money in the Bank does. So for him to decide to come out and cash in on the U.S. belt, let's pretend he's successful at that. That shows you right then and there. And we were talking off air, similar about how Charlotte Flair used her Royal Rumble to go towards the NXT Championship at WrestleMania. And just the one aspect I'll say about that is, yes, it did kind of diminish that a little bit. But there are, I feel now, because we have 2 Royal Rumble winners, so it's a way to kind of make it different. So if we did have, well, I guess we do have a women's and a men's Money in the Bank winner, but I guess the difference is she was still trying to go after what is considered a heavyweight championship and is considered, one of the main event championships. I remember back in the day, a good example of this is what probably the NXT belt is now is similar to what, remember the ECW belt? The ECW belt was, it was the 3rd show. Clearly it wasn't the heavyweight belt. It wasn't the universal belt. It wasn't one of those, but they gave it to Bobby Lashley. They gave it to other guys and treated it like a 3rd heavyweight belt, even though clearly, it's not the ones that the main guys held, but Bobby Lashley still held it. And they tried to put it on the WrestleMania card and treat it. They're not treating the US belt isn't the 3rd heavyweight belt in any stretch of the imagination.
Well, to me, it's the mid-card belt. That's what it is. It's just the mid-card belt. And that just signifies to me, to finish up the points, it's Vince McMahon would have already rubber-stamped him and given him he would have been he would have been a heavyweight champion, or they would have waited till a different time to give him the heavyweight championship. So not only was he going for the U.S. title, but he lost. How does he come back from this?
And that's the biggest thing that comes out of this, is that this is supposed to give you that big push. And this is similar to like Triple H and the curtain call, and just like what did Austin Theory sleep with Stephanie McMahon or something? Like, what did he do? Because this is essentially like a punishment. This is like Triple H not winning the King of the Ring 1996. That is like, you're punished for that kind of thing. That's what this is. Like, you're going to go out there, you're going to challenge for a lesser belt. First off, because even if he challenged for a bigger belt and lost, that's still not essentially a punishment, because you're still putting yourself in the main event picture. If you win the Royal Rumble, go to WrestleMania like Brock Lesnar, and then lose, you're still in the main event picture. But we're going to make you look stupid by going out there. The only other thing I could think of that they could have made it worse is if he went out there and then tripped and fell on his face and then acted like he was Eugene going to cash it in. Like, that's the only way you could make him look even worse than he already looked, because he looked bad.
To me, I don't want to speculate, because there hasn't been anything reported that he's done something wrong. He hasn't he's ticked off the wrong people. Like, it seems like from all indications, he's been a constant professional even at a young age. I think this is just my take on things. I think Triple H is very old school in the aspect of, okay, you might be the young guy, but you were kind of handed the keys by Vince, and we're going to take a step back with that, and you're going to earn your stripes like everybody else has in the past. Being a young superstar, we're going to have you. We're going to build you up later on.
I think my, and no pun intended, theory on this.
Oh, well done.
Is not that aspect. I don't understand him losing the U.S. I mean, I do understand in the sense of you want Seth Rollins to still be the champion, so I do understand that. I guess the one thing I don't understand, like I can't understand, is whatever your decision was, like if he was going to challenge for something else, okay? Well, why wouldn't you at least have him challenge for something that you were going to lead him to win? I guess.
Yeah.
The reason I can see why he didn't challenge for the world belt is because I think Triple H included, and maybe WWE, as we move on the months and months and months, and we start to long-term storyline, they're starting to see where we're going to go. And when they gave the belt to Austin Theory, you have ideas of where you're going to go, but what Survivor Series looks like in WrestleMania and the Rumble, you don't necessarily know. Yeah. And as those plans were maybe starting to get more concrete, and they were sitting down in the storytelling room and they were getting it together of where exactly they were going to go between, let's say, here and Money in the Bank of next year, maybe, because you do have the 1 year, right? So maybe they were saying, we don't see Roman losing this belt. We don't see, and we see him facing these people for the belt, these big time people who could essentially beat him. we don't see him losing the belt between here and there. So what does that do for Austin Theory? It'd be like if, somebody won the Royal Rumble. Let's say Austin Theory won the Royal Rumble, and then they're like, now that we look at it, it's going to be Brock and Roman for the belts. But what do we do with Austin? We did this already. They have to find a way to essentially write him out of this. They made a mistake, essentially, I guess, by giving him Money in the Bank is what they're looking at, because now they're realizing we gave him this gift certificate for a store that's no longer existing. Like, we gave him this Money in the Bank for an opportunity that we're now looking at down the line, and we don't see a time for him to have the belt. We don't see a time for him to cash in against Roman Reigns. We're writing Roman Reigns for Rumble. We're writing Roman Reigns for WrestleMania. We may be writing Roman Reigns for further than that, and we're realizing, crap, we don't have a spot for him. But again, the place that I guess I don't understand is if you see that, you see, well, I guess Roman's not giving one, because, people were talking about giving up one of the belts and separating the belts. Whatever the thing is, they don't see Austin Theory in that. They made a mistake. They want to backtrack. They drafted the wrong guy. They wish they could redraft. They want a do-over. That's, the theory in this. Again, no pun intended with the theory terminology.
Nice play on words.
But
nice. Very nice.
Why wouldn't you then pick something for him to then be successful at? Maybe the NXT belt. Maybe you'd say, oh, you know what? Let's have him go against the NXT, like what they were doing with Braun Breaker and the whole gimmick of the last NXT pay-per-view. Why wouldn't you say, okay, we can't fit you in with Roman. Roman's got both belts. We're not even taking the belts off him. We're not even going to waste a pay-per-view by having you face him because he just beat these very dominant people. Yeah, and he's only looking more dominant. So we're not going to waste time to have him face somebody that people know that he's going to devour.
The NXT belt would have been a good idea. I mean, and here's the thing,
Gunther and the IC belt, whatever belt it is, just have it be a belt and where you could see,
but here's
have
the thing,
him cash in successfully.
I don't like you said, is there really room for him at this point? I don't see a spot where you say, I want Theory over this guy or that guy on the main roster. Because right now, would you have liked to seen him cash in and win the Intercontinental belt against a Gunther?
I mean, yes, as much as, you don't necessarily want to see these things in the sense of you'd rather them go for the world belts. At least you write them into where you can fit them in. What would look really stupid now is if for some time in the next 3 or 4 months, he becomes Intercontinental Champion or U.S. Champion or some champion, and where they can say, well, then you should have just had him become champion with money. You should have, Why did you have him waste it? Why would you have someone win the Royal Rumble in order to then take it away from them and then at No Way Out, give them the number one contendership and they go on to WrestleMania? You're like, so if he does become a champion, because that's essentially what you telling him when he cashes in that Money in the Bank and he loses, what you're essentially saying is for not just now, but for the foreseeable future, in like the next 6 months of writing, we don't have you challenging or winning any championship belts.
Yeah, I'll say this.
So we have to take you out of all of those pictures essentially right now.
It's a long road. I think Theory's road to a championship, to your point, I don't think it's a short road. I think it's a long dirt road where he's.
It's longer now because if it was shorter, they would have just said, "Oh, we see you facing Gunther at the next pay-per-view. Hey, I got an idea how that could happen. Money in the Bank." But they just took it away.
I don't see him. I don't see a path for him at this point to challenge for any belts till SummerSlam. That's kind of where I'm at with him at this point. And here's the thing, that's not a knock on Theory. Because I like Austin Theory. I think he's a hell of a talent. I think he has everything you're looking for. He has all the tools in the toolbox. He's a good wrestler. He's got a great look. He reminds me a lot of, he has a lot of John Cena about him. I see the talent with Austin Theory. It's just I think Triple H wants to go in a different direction, and I think at this point, you're not going to see him in any. I think, unfortunately, he's probably going to be almost like I don't even want to put him in this kind of area, but he could be almost like a glorified jobber enhancement at this point. I
don't want to go too far to really bury the guy because up until the other day, he had Money in the Bank. This is one thing happened, but it was a big thing that happened for sure.
But how they handle that, where you not only did you cash in on a lesser belt, but you lost.
So you don't have Money in the Bank or the belt. Yes. You have nothing. You left Raw with nothing.
That's the only way that WWE can recover this whole Austin Theory situation, so he has a quick bounce back, is if he puts in a hell of a match. I'm not saying he's going to win the match, but a hell of a match against Bobby Lashley at this point, because Bobby Lashley was the one who caused him not to win because he hit the 8 count down and And Bobby said, no, you're not winning this belt.
And, the storytelling with that essentially would just be to me that they're trying to hype up Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley for the U.S. belt to kind of go one-on-one. And if for some reason they do throw Austin Theory in there, then again, I think that's still, then I don't understand the failed cash-in. Because if, let's say, Survivor Series or the pay-per-view after Survivor Series or whatever, whenever, the time comes where it's Bobby versus Seth versus Austin Theory in a triple threat match for the U.S. belt, let's say, whenever that time comes, why would there would still be no justification to have him cash in Money in the Bank and lose regardless? Because either way, he could have used that. He could have used the Money in the Bank to get himself involved in that match, and that's how he's in the triple threat match.
Sure.
He could have used the Money in the Bank to beat Seth Rollins if obviously the idea is that there's going to be a triple threat. We saw that with Crown Jewel, with Alexa Bliss and Asuka winning the tag belts. I mean, yes, they lost them at Crown Jewel, but they won them for the time being. So even if the long-term story time is...
Here's what happens. The course correct at this point because of the damage that's been done to Theory and Austin Theory and his stock right now. Because this, if Austin Theory was a tradable commodity in the say WWE had a stock market, he would have crashed. It would have been like the crypto crash that we saw not too long ago. That's where it would be. The only way he could go up at this point, and the way WWE would have to salvage him quickly, I'm not saying they're going to do this, but quickly is they put him in a good match against Bobby Lashley. I'm not saying he wins, but he has to look respectable. Anything else at this point, it's a long road for him. It's going to be a long road for him to be a champion. That's just that's the way I look at it. And here's what I could see happening, and I hate saying this because I have put him in high regard, I guess is what I'm saying. He could go to NXT. I mean, why not at this point? Why, if they're not going to use him adequately on the main roster, and they're not going to put him in good storylines, and all he's going to be is a guy that puts on good matches but takes the loss, then why don't you let him go down to NXT and run roughshod down there?
I will say I don't put it past WWE yet to not include this in some sort of storyline, which he then will try to challenge for the U.S. belt down the future, and they're just going about it a more unique, less predictable way. A good example of that is we've seen with the Royal Rumbles before, for example, when John Cena and Batista both eliminated themselves, and instead of crowning them both winners, they had the match continue until John Cena won. Well, at WrestleMania, they both fought for championships, so the original result could have stayed. The same with The Rock and Big Show. Obviously, there was the controversy at the 2000 Royal Rumble where, The Rock's feet touched. Did the Big Show get eliminated first? They had them fight at the next pay-per-view to decide who really won the Royal Rumble. When again, you could have just stuck with the result of they both won the Royal Rumble because in the end, they both did go to WrestleMania and they both were in the main event of that year's WrestleMania. So there was no need to go about, essentially, like I said, with Cena and Batista, to have a definitive winner of that Royal Rumble. You could have said, you both won. You're both going to WrestleMania, because that's exactly what did happen. So, in this aspect of him cashing in, I could just see this, being a roundabout way for him still being the U.S. champion, still being involved in this U.S. belt feud. But they're just going about it like a different way. Instead of getting himself in by, having the Money in the Bank, he gets himself in by having and losing, but then getting himself back in a different way just to keep, I think, things fresher, different than they've been before. Maybe take a different take on this. Like I said, we've never seen this before. This is right now the worst cash in history. And one thing that's a positive about that is that makes things different. We're here to talk about the worst cash in history. Normally cash ins are all the same. They're all predictable. Win or lose. I mean, they win most of the time, but maybe this is WWE's way of being like, hey, let's throw a real curveball. No one's ever seen this before. They're going to hate it. They're going to hate The Undertaker losing, but they're going to talk about it. And it's going to add a different element here.
I hope you're right. I don't know if that's exactly what they're going for. I think this. I do think this is upper management in WWE at this point without Vince McMahon's finger on the on the button, so to speak. That it's just that they don't feel as high on Austin Theory as Vince McMahon did. That's what I think happens. I mean, I would love that. I would love that to be the case. But I just don't see that being the case. I think it's more upper management, Triple H, for example, just not maybe he doesn't feel that he has earned enough to be in this spot. That's what I mean. Because Triple H is an old school guy. Like I said earlier, he's an old school guy. So maybe he wants to see him earn his stripes first before he does it. Which is why I don't want to see him doing it, but it could be a really good thing for him where he goes to NXT and just kicks the crap out of everybody and puts on really good matches against Braun Breaker and some other guys, which that's helped other superstars before. So I wouldn't put it past WWE to do
one
that.
final kayfabe bow I will put on this. That obviously we talked the segment at the start here about why wrestling, you can say it's fake even if you thought that the matches were real. Well, here's another way you can say it's fake, and this will be the bow on it, because let's say Austin Theory really did have the dream of being the U.S. champion. One thing, like let's pretend I think wrestling's 100% real and everything is as it is. I would still go, well, that was dumb, and the reason it was dumb is because this was in a match in which Seth Rollins, let's not forget, it was an open challenge for the U.S. belt. So if he really wanted the belt, he could have just, I know obviously we saw Bobby Lashley would have came out and probably destroyed him or whatever to take the challenge instead. But the idea is let's pretend this is 100% factual. This is Austin Theory being a real person doing things. He really wants the U.S. belt, whatever. Wouldn't he go out when the challenge is open and doesn't have to cash in the money in the bank? Yeah, I mean,
now that would be a very unique concept that I think WWE could have done. And essentially, if he loses like he did, he still walks out with the briefcase and nothing lost, nothing gained for him, and it's all good.
Well, yeah,
I
mean, there's been so many times where people have had the briefcases and then they've had like championship matches, but they're not cashing in. Like, if you have a championship match at WrestleMania after you won the Rumble, let you have it on Monday Night Raw a few nights later. That doesn't necessarily negate your Royal Rumble privileges. This is just an additional thing. This is like insurance.
That's a good call. That's a good call.
So in all reality, if wrestling wasn't the scripted thing and Austin Theory was doing what he wanted to do based on his own motives here, people would be questioning him in the post-game conference of like, hey, if you wanted the U.S. belt, why didn't you just answer the open challenge, which Seth Rollins throws down quite a bit? Really kind of making it even stupider that he cashed in Money in the Bank to go after a belt in which Seth Rollins is putting on the line freely almost all the time.
Yeah, he's just putting it out there for anybody to come out and
challenge for.
Throw down. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that until you mentioned that. He could have essentially had two opportunities that he could have, honestly, if they really liked, if Vince McMahon had his finger on it, it could have been, he does the open challenge, doesn't give up his Money in the Bank briefcase, wins that belt, and then Vince loves him so much and says, why don't you use your Money in the Bank and go get the other belt too? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
time will tell
what
they're going to do with Austin Theory.